All right, I don't know how to get the chat up. Give everybody a few minutes here to get settled in while we're going live. You can hear my dogs downstairs. Hopefully you can't hear them. Hopefully the microphone's good enough where you do not hear them, but they are barking right now on occasion. So I apologize if you hear some dogs barking in the background. They're good puppies, I promise. They're good puppies. Let's see if we can get this chat feature back up here. Make sure we're live. All right, we are live. So I'm going to pop in this and turn the volume off so I don't have to hear myself. So that way I can at least check the chat feature on my phone. Wait for some folks to gather here. Friday night. Apologize for the tardiness here. Busy day in this house. It's nice to be on this thing right now where I'm not on a Zoom with the headphones on where I can just kind of talk into here and hang out with y'all. So hopefully we'll have a little bit of time together and ramp up. I used to have the chat feature up here on my screen, but now it's down here. Don't even know where to go here while I'm watching this live, but we'll go ahead and get through it. All right, we're going to get off of that. I'm getting texts from my team who helps out here, letting me know when the live is done. The live just started, so I'll probably get a lot of messages while we're going through this. Tonight's going to be pretty quick. A lot of stuff to go through just to kind of make this simple and clean and easy to understand. The world at large right now is getting more confusing. And in this particular episode today, we're going to talk a little bit about money, a lot about politics today, and about the demoralization of this country that is certainly part of any plan who would want to, of an enemy that would want to conquer a nation, is they certainly would want to demoralize, the community as much as possible. And I see we have some folks on here for chat. I don't know how to check the chat, so I can't see you here tonight. I'll have to have our guy come fix that. It's off the screen for me right now. I'm going to try as we go through here, so please don't think that I'm ignoring you. I'm just trying to make sure that we have this right and everything is live. So yeah, tonight a little bit more about politics stuff that we're doing here. I hope to wrap this up in about a half an hour. If you want to stick around after this, I don't know if I can do it without a chat feature though. I don't know how to get that up. I may have to call my guy here and see how I can get the chat feature back up on the screen so I can see your questions. I really don't want to do a Bitcoin workshop without that, and I cannot see them. My screen, all I can see is how many people are on here and that there is a chat, but I cannot see what's in the chat, and that is kind of a problem when you're trying to do Q&A. So just a little bit of patience with me here on this thing. If I need to do it on Saturday or Sunday, we'll certainly get it done. I'm about 2.5 months behind on this thing, but promise you guys I'm not lazy here. I'm building a business in the background, a couple of them actually, and doing my very best to be as good a father as I can be. I'm actually not at the movies with my wife and my daughter and her friend. They went to go see Beetlejuice 2. I have no interest in seeing a remake of a good movie. That'll probably be okay. I hope it's okay. I hope they're having fun, but we're going to go ahead and get started here and walk through. First things first, we always start with money, politics, and then we go to religion. That's just kind of our pathway with this chat, with these live chats, this show in general. So today the jobs report came out. I always talk about these. I think they're very important to understand that most of them are nonsense and that they are really being used as a ploy to subdue people's anger about what's actually happening in the market during an election season. That's one component. The other component that the jobs report is being used for is to rig the stock market because, as I've stated many times, it's algorithmic trading, and in an algorithm, when an algorithm is being built, it'll give higher levels of evidence or of credibility to certain information sources that come out in order to create a trading module, whether to buy or sell. So that's happening. So the jobs report came out, 142,000 jobs, 4.2% unemployment rate. Now, these numbers don't seem bad. They actually seem pretty logical. If you remember back about 6 months ago, we were expecting 300,000 new jobs, and we got 532,000 new jobs. I think that was January. That report has now been revised to below 300,000. So whatever the number is today is just the number it is today. They're certainly going to change that and make it something different in the future. That's just pretty much what happens with these reports, especially in this administration, though it's not unique. They have been modifying jobs reports after the fact for as long as jobs reports have been a thing. And to be honest with you, the information that they pull from is not really as good as some of the payroll services. So I look around at payroll services, I see what they're talking about, and it's pretty easy to see at this point in time where the declines are in the overall job sectors. So the 4 sectors right now that are losing the most jobs are in manufacturing, professional services, IT, and small business. May not sound like a big thing to you, but we continue to hear from the politicians that we're manufacturing more than we ever have before. We're producing more oil than we ever have before. Those are two in the same. They're both measured and registered in the same capacity, oil and manufacturing. It's a manufacturing job. And we are seeing the biggest declines right now in professional services. So those are your concierge jobs, data entry, things like that. I expect that to continue to get pummeled with the onslaught of AI that we're about to see. So professional services is definitely a changing arena. Manufacturing is probably the most concerning factor of all the jobs losses, because if we do not manufacture our own products in this country, we actually are not really a country. If we are continually importing everything that we need, we will always be beholden to foreign nations. So say one thing we import quite a bit is military parts. We import a lot of those. We import a lot of food. I talked about flowers in the last episode. A lot of perishables come in from overseas, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I don't want to sit here and say it's a terrible thing for that to happen. You certainly need import and export. But when you completely eliminate your ability to export, you not only lose jobs and revenue and GDP for the nation. At the same time, you also lose the ability to be self-sustaining. And throughout all of human history, any nation that has attempted to become a nationalist organization and self-sustaining without the need for constant import for goods has always been attacked. This has been a prevalent theme throughout all of history, and America is the next one. I mean, number one, if you can't produce your own goods, you're easy to attack because they can weaken you from the outside by simply cutting off your supply. And when we have so much importation, especially of food, and I talked about food in the last episode, we'll grow vegetables here, we ship them over to China, they can them and treat them and process them with all kinds of chemicals that are illegal in China, and then they send these illegally packaged products back to America to be sold. So on one hand, you're not having to do the work. On the other hand, what happens if we get into a conflict with China and all of a sudden they say, you know what, let's just keep those canned goods. These are very dangerous times, and self-sufficiency is not just an individual trait. Being self-sufficient is huge, very important these days. But it's also important to have a self-sufficient nation that can take care of itself, and we produce very little, and that's evident now in the layoffs in manufacturing that we're producing even less. Some more evidence that's coming out about this. They put together a article and a miniature white paper, 2-page notice, basically with statistics on who's getting the jobs right now and who's losing the jobs. The last report from last month came in where foreign-born workers were actually, their employment increased by 632,000 new jobs went to foreign-born workers, while native-born workers lost 1.325 million jobs. That's a 2-to-1 ratio, a little more than a 2-to-1 ratio. So for every job that an American, every 2 Americans lose, a foreign-born, non-native citizen is getting a job. In other words, for every job that a foreigner gets, 2 Americans lose their job. Doesn't matter what the job is. Doesn't matter if you hate the job, don't like the job, don't think it's important in the world. It's important to someone because they have to put food on their table. And right now, our economy is losing 2 American jobs for every foreign-born job. That is just a simple stat and a fact of life that we cannot change at this point in time, which is why this election is so important, is to focus in on America first. America is not focused on America. America never has been focused on America. America right now is focused in on Ukraine, Israel, every other place in the world except for America. And this is a byproduct of a century of brainwashing to make us think everything's fine here. We're always going to be good. It's America. We're the strongest. We're going to survive. We always need to focus on somewhere else besides our own backyard. That is, by definition, the most dangerous thought you can ever have, especially when the most dangerous border in the world happens to be our southern border. And by the way, no one's talking about the northern border, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute, because the northern border gets no credit, and there's no statistics, there's no information, and there's no possible way that people are not coming into America via Washington or Idaho or any of the northern states. There's just no way that that's not happening. It's an area that we need to demand stats and protection. So the southern border, wide open. There's no wall on the northern border. And our northern neighbors are already communists who are inviting in plagues from all over the world that they're letting across the border. I would just assume that. We'll get into that in a moment. So when we look at the American jobs reports and noticing that right now we have, again, 2 Americans lose their job for every foreign-born person that gets one. Where are Americans turning to make money? Is it a wholesome area? Is it an area that will help support society and create a better future? The answer is absolutely unequivocally, no. A new report came out from OnlyFans, which is like an amateur porn site. OnlyFans did $6.6 billion in payments. The CEO bonused himself a dividend of $472 million, and the number of content creators increased by 29% last quarter. That is maybe to me the most shocking sign of a disenfranchised, demoralized community that you will ever find in any evidence that you'll ever see. So while Americans are losing their job, foreigners are getting those jobs, and the Americans who can't find jobs are now turning to the porn industry in order to make ends meet or to become famous. I mean, there's certainly people who do that. It's the wrong kind of fame. All you young people need to turn away from that. This has become a very big piece of the demoralization and desensitization of the American society. Now, while this is happening, currencies around the world are actually going bonkers. Most people don't pay attention to currencies. If they do, they pay attention to the DXY, the American dollar, the value of the American dollar versus currency, a basket of currencies from around the world. And that's been pretty stable. We were up around 106 for a few months, and now we're down around 101.8, I think was the close today. But while that's going on, the Canadian dollar is tanking. And this is going to happen because right now Russia is upping their purchasing power for gold. Next month, they plan on buying 600 times the amount of gold that they normally buy each month. And that's coming by way of avoiding sanctions, which now we're talking about sanctioning Russia even more. And all that's doing is opening up an entire new market, creating a BRICS alliance around us through the weaponization of our money. And more importantly, what it's doing is it's completely breaking apart whatever global order they thought they had at one point in time, because the black market for oil right now is dominating, which is why you're seeing oil drop. So sanctions on nations, when you try to sanction nations to not be able to buy essential goods that they import from other countries, when you actually force them to use other means, they will, because these leaders must provide energy, food, and water for their civilians, and they're going to find a way around the system. And that way around the system has always been the black market. There is not less oil being purchased right now. There's actually just less registered sales taking place. This is part of the Afghanistan debacle. Most people look at Afghanistan and just say, what a clown show. We did a terrible job of exiting it, which we did. It's a tragedy. 13 service members lost their lives. Thankfully, President Trump was at Arlington to honor them. Biden and Harris did not show up to that. Very disrespectful to those who serve in the military, the armed forces. And if they're not going to say, we love you, we respect you, I will. We need you in this nation, probably now more than ever. But when we see these things occurring around the country and we watch the sanctions be imposed and black markets, become opened up in the world, it's an area where we can't control. So Afghanistan is absolutely in that mix. When Afghanistan happened, when we withdrew from Afghanistan way too quickly, way unplanned, and lost a lot of lives, that dominated the news cycle. But I don't think people were seeing the other avenue. When we withdrew from Afghanistan, we basically removed all of our power to regulate. Not that that's a good thing or bad thing. People should regulate their own nations. There's certainly a lot of problems in Afghanistan. Again, another nation that we're focused on, like they need to get better while our young people are on OnlyFans because they can't get a job because foreigners are taking them. We're worried about, Afghanistan, Israel, and all these other countries. Now, the Afghanistan withdrawal opened up a gigantic black market for the sale of oil. So during that time, Iran, which still can't really use the US dollar per Trump's sanctions, he sanctioned them against the dollar. We didn't give them money, but Biden and Harris unfroze $6 billion that we had frozen of their money, which obviously is going towards terrorism and supporting their own needs. They'll call it a loan against that and be able to use that money any way they like, as long as it's replaced or repatriated at some point. But when Afghanistan opened up, you have to look at its geographical location. You can now ship oil directly from Iran through Afghanistan to China. And that's exactly what's been happening over there. It's still happening over there. It's going to happen over there until something happens. Now that they've built the new Silk Road initiative that cuts basically from Russia or China all the way through Europe, these new pipelines, these new avenues for distribution of natural resources and other valuable goods is going to become more and more prevalent over time. The Afghanistan withdrawal was sad, but really what it did was it damaged the entire international order of oil sales, which may be a good thing, maybe a bad thing. But keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, because the price of oil is now around $68. A lot of places are projecting $60 oil in the coming time. I think that's a pretty normal thing where we are. When we have massive mega powers that are focusing on proxy wars throughout the world, it's inevitable that at some point in time, a larger scale war will break out where oil will be required. So what you're watching right now is you're watching a lot of drop in the demand for oil, which is primarily coming out of China. People look at China and what the news actually glorifies China tremendously. Oh, what a great nation, powerful economy. The only reason that China is even a conversation about the economy is because, number one, they were allowed into all of the global organizations for trade, even though they're communist. That used to actually be against the rules of these global orders. And at the same time, the Chinese economy has been using US dollars. I mean, I remember watching a video about a group out of Southern California that was selling Chinese securities. And when they actually went to the facilities, people set up cameras days before. There was no one working there for days. But when the investors came to look at the facility, it was full of people. The fountains are turned on, the lights. It's been a big Ponzi scheme, a lot of these Chinese stocks. So their actual economy is propped up on fraud, because fraud is allowed. You just can't commit fraud against another Chinese person. If you commit fraud against an American in China, there's no penalty for that. And that's been evidence for years and years and years. And people still keep saying that this economy is thriving, it's robust, it's going to compete with the American economy. That is hogwash. If anything, a foreign nation that may compete with our economy in the future would be India. But China by itself is destroying and dying a very slow death. So we all heard about Evergrande and the big Evergrande debacle. There's been 15 other companies that have declared bankruptcy that are equal or just smaller than Evergrande in China. Their stocks are trading at a 2008 level. You all remember what happened in 2008. They are now in that pre-depression, recession, slowdown, stagflation area that everyone else is in. And they happen to be the largest importer of oil in the world. Now, they did a massive amount of importing as soon as sanctions were placed on Russia. Within weeks, they had actually designed a contract that Russia could sell China as much oil as they'd like to, as long as they paid for it with physical gold. So that became burdensome after a while, but that trade was made. And then they opened up their own trade lines to be able to use national currencies. So if they were using the ruble or the yuan, either one was eligible. So Russia has been selling a massive amount of oil to China, who has gone through a slow economic decline. A lot of businesses are shutting down. The unemployment rate for those under 30 is around 28%. So people under the age of 30, only 72% of them actually have a job. All of these indicators of statistics, and take them with a grain of salt because it's China, so always use if true. But if all this data is correct, we will be looking at a massive slowdown in the economy that they knew was coming, to be able to harvest early during the last 2 years, to be able to bring in a lot of oil to stockpile it for a later date. So the energy market, the oil market, what I'm seeing right now is a weaponization of energy. I was talking about that about 8 months ago when all of the conflict really started picking up. But as you see what's happening in Israel, which I'll get to in a moment, with Palestine, as you see this stuff start to develop and you're looking at foreign conflicts that are coming out, these are never surprise. There's no surprise in military activity. It just isn't that way. It's always pre-planned for quite a bit, sometimes 2, 3, 5, 10 years before anything happens. So while these military conflicts are happening throughout different regions, between Europe and the Middle East, you're watching China stockpile. So now that they're stockpiled and their economy is slowed down, they're using less of that oil. Ultimately, if conflict does spread, they will have to increase the amount of activity within the economy and use more oil in the future. So one way or another, oil is going to be weaponized in the next 6 to 12 months, whether you want to believe that or not. So you will see a move like we saw when the Ukraine-Russia conflict started, where oil went from in the mid-70s to over 120 within a matter of a couple of months. It doesn't take long for reserves to be turned in the wrong direction and prices to be lifted pretty significantly. Now, also understanding that situation is important to know that there are no segregated power players in the world. No nations work really independently. All of these leaders know each other. They all orchestrate things. Everything that you're seeing from a military and political standpoint right now is pretty much kabuki theater. It's scary to watch, but it's kabuki theater. Not that it's fake, but it's all pre-organized. So what we might be watching also is an alliance between communists from one nation to another. We have communists here. They are occupying the White House, and they may be collaborating in order to try to get more people excited about voting for communists again. So during this election cycle, I expect to see oil prices pretty low. I expect to see gasoline prices fairly low. I know they shot up here to $3.25 for a few days. They're back at $2.67, I think I filled up at earlier today. And those prices are bearable. It was $1.77 here in Texas when Trump was in office, so they're still much higher than they were, which is punishing the middle and lower class. But I expect to see energy prices very low until October. And I think around October, you're going to start to see the weaponization of energy along with a very, very nasty GDP report if they can't find a way to doctor it, which I talked about in a few episodes now, will happen through military conflict. So they cannot any longer really take our natural gas and sell it overseas at a profit because the prices have come down in Europe. What they can do right now is they can keep giving away our military equipment and financing that military equipment with U.S. dollars to U.S. companies and bolster the GDP. But I highly doubt that that's going to be the environment that we experience moving forward. I think we're just going to see political collusion to try to keep communists in the hindsight or the forefront of voters moving forward. So I expect to see that. Now, all of this pressure that's being created, BRICS is a major topic. I remember talking about BRICS. I actually went to Rice University in Houston and gave an entire speech about BRICS to people who had never heard it before. This was almost 2 years ago. And when I talked about that in CBDCs, that entire room, there was maybe 15 people out of 200 in that room that had even ever heard of BRICS or understood what a CBDC was. So I try to look at things from a positive perspective. And I would think that, going from 7.5% of 200 people, 15 people, 7.5% of people knew what BRICS was or knew what a CBDC was 2 years ago. I would say that table is flipped. I think that we're probably looking at 80% of the country knows what's happening with BRICS and knows what a CBDC is. 20% may never know. God bless their soul, bless their heart, as they say in the South. But I hope they wake up and start understanding and seeing these things, because 54 nations are going to be meeting at the next BRICS summit next month. Now, there are some people who are the BRICS story is anything that's happening in the world is going to have 1,000 theories behind it. All of them are pretty valid. I don't know the truth. But some theories are that BRICS is going to completely take out the dollar and the United States will be enslaved. Another theory is BRICS is working with Trump and they have this grand plan to save America. And somewhere in the middle of those two things is probably reality. Let's just be honest. It doesn't matter what happens. Those nations hate our nation and they hate the power that the United States has, especially from a global reserve currency status. So I would look at those things from a different perspective. And I would say what BRICS' real purpose is right now, especially with Turkey looking at joining BRICS, is that right now I think BRICS could be the straw that breaks the camel's back on NATO. And if you're a fan of NATO, you're probably much older. NATO is an organized street gang of nations that are designed to create war. You provoke one, you provoke them all, which is how mafias and gangs work. And I think that if we actually look at this from the right perspective, BRICS could be a very good aligning force to destroy NATO and allow nations to be independent once again, which will create peace and financial harmony, pretty much all across the world through every nation. I apologize, the dogs are barking here. No one's home to stop them from barking. Now, the Fed came out in the middle of all this stuff, the middle of the Fed problem. We're at almost $36 trillion, printing $9 billion per day right now, paying $3 billion a day in interest. One of the Fed heads, Mr. Goolsbee, great name for a guy who runs a fake money printer, Goolsbee. Mr. Goolsbee came out and said the odds of recession might be rising. Well, no kidding. We've been in a recession for 2.5 years. The next phase of this is not pleasant. And the more they keep appeasing the masses who are ignorant to the fact that financial numbers don't lie, but government officials do, the longer we're going to be in this cycle of people not understanding how much danger they're in and how important their vote is. This is extremely important because the market is pricing in 6, possibly 7 rate drops before the end of the year. It's September. We're almost halfway through September. So we're looking at 6 rate drops. That's a 0.5 point every month for the rest of the year. That's going to make it easy to borrow money. That's going to be a good thing. You'll be able to borrow once again, but earning will be difficult, which will mean big problems for the stock market and the economy as a whole, because as they start to ease the rates at the Federal Reserve, they print to go along with it. The only reason, and they are going to drop rates, by the way, because we are in an election season and the interest payments on all of our debt are really high right now. And the only win that the left can have is to negotiate to lower rates so that we're paying less in interest, because we're never going to pay off the principal. That's never going to happen with the amount of debt we have. So I would pay attention to this, because when they start saying, and this is inevitable, when you look at money tightening, rates rising for as long as they've risen with us, there's about 15 different examples. You can go back in the 40s, the 70s, parts of the 80s. The 70s really kind of tells the story. As soon as rates, the rates rise really rapidly, and then at a certain point they start dropping them and the market crashes. And this is something that's happened 100% of the time throughout all of history if you're a chartist and you pay attention to these things. Very dangerous time. And the area that they would get a win in from a consumer perspective is not necessarily the interest payments that are being made on the national debt. The big voter win that they'd be looking for is the ability to buy a home. Now, the information I've given out here is, the square footage of an average house is down 128 square feet, while the price has gone up $125,000. Those are unavoidable facts. That's just basic data. Now, in between this, the average down payment to buy a new home, this is the average. Now, I know wherever you live, it'll be cheaper or more expensive. So this is a national average. The average down payment for a new home right now is up 14% year over year. So the average person buying a home has to come up with $67,500, where most of the nation, and I'm talking most of the nation, the numbers are all over the place. It's around 60% of the nation doesn't even have $1,000 saved for an emergency. So these are final ploys that are just band-aids. The economy in America, we got a bullet hole in 2008. We got shot in 2008. We've been putting band-aids on a bullet hole since 2008. This is the final band-aid. There really is no real instant gratification way to fix the problems in the economy. This is going to take a long time to do. I know Trump is saying we'll turn it around tomorrow morning, and maybe they will. Maybe there's something I don't understand, and that's very possible. But from my perspective, in order to change government spending, regulations, the cost of regulations, the interest rate environment that we have, the average family is 49%, 48% in the stocks. Stocks are going to get pummeled. We have a lot of risk in crypto. We have a lot of risk all over the place. We have new mandated insurance being proposed. We have capital gains tax from unrealized gains down the pathway. They're looking at raising taxes $5 trillion, which is more than double the current tax collection in this country. There are so many problems that need to be solved. You're going to need a miracle pill in the middle of this to be able to do it. Even backing the currency with gold, it'll do it for a period of time. 15, 20 years is about all the time it takes for these things to start getting infiltrated and diluted again. So I don't know what the magic miracle pill is, but I know right now in the economy as we sit, it's too expensive to buy a home. It's too expensive to go to the doctor. It's too expensive to buy groceries. It's too expensive to keep your gym membership, and it's too expensive to get sick and go to the doctor. So how do you win? These are all areas where there is no miracle pill instant fix for any of these problems. And in the middle of it, Mr. Goolsbee is coming out and saying, hey, we might be going into a recession as he goes home to his mansion on a hill. Now, in the middle of all this, we have now the Biden-Harris administration came out today and said that they are prepared to give more aid to Ukraine. So again, you step on the faces of those that are laying in the streets of your own country to be able to hand money to foreign nations for a cause you have no part in. We have no part in any of these wars. Zero, especially Ukraine. We are watching things that are coming back to economic disaster. So let's just put a scenario together and say, you know what, maybe we went to gold-backed money. We do all these things and the economy is turning itself around. Maybe we did that 3 years ago. Maybe this administration did the right thing and they're fixing the economy. We still have new emerging election season problems. We have 4 new viruses that are out there. We have celebrities and women's basketball players going on interview shows and telling them that COVID is back and you need to be prepared. And now we have 2 states, Vermont and Massachusetts, both heavily blue states, that are preparing for lockdowns from new viruses. Now, the funny part about this is in Vermont, they're preparing to lock down over a disease that only horses get. So you could easily close the doors of the stable and keep them safe. Maybe put a mask on the horse. Maybe put a mask on the other end of the horse if you're scared of monkeypox. But you certainly don't need to lock down your community and keep them from working and earning and producing towards the GDP because some people got sick. They're preparing to try to do this in Texas, where I'm at, because they're killing mosquitoes with all types of neurotoxins everywhere in Fort Worth because one person got West Nile virus. This overreaction isn't only a political ploy, it's also a ploy to destroy your economy and your well-being and your standard of living. So pay attention to it and defy it at all costs, because if you don't, your children will pay the price after you pay a price. They'll pay a bigger one, but both of you will serve a master you don't desire to serve. Now, CNBC, by the way, before I wrap this up on a financial perspective, September has not had a green day of trading yet. So we're September 6th right now. This has been 5 trading days. All 5 trading days were losses across the board. And now $1.86 trillion has been evaporated from wealth because of what's happening in the stock market. And that's while the stock market is anticipating 6 rate cuts moving forward. So protect your money, gold, silver, Bitcoin, raw land, oil, and gas, and then trade the VIX. So if you traded the VIX, by the way, we've had a really good week of about 51% returns. This is after 138% return on August 5th. That trade, and I'll give them out to you because I guess people ask me all the time, UVIX, UVIX is a 2 times long strategy, a decent ETF that mocks the VIX. For those of you who don't understand what the VIX is, it comes from the Chicago Board of Options Exchange. This is an indicator of market volatility based on options contracts that are being traded. An option is a bet on what will happen in the future. It's a derivative of a stock. And when that happens, traders, if they're going short a lot, that means we're going to have downturn in the market. If they're going long and actually borrowing the stock or buying the stock, then that gives them an indicator of where the market will go moving forward. Options traders trade all the time. That's what they do, and they're very good at predicting the markets most of the time. So UVIX is a good one to use, an ETF to use. I'd go in and out, watch it daily. If you're getting, what I do with my strategy is I'll put money into it. If it goes up significantly, I'll take off my gains. I'll buy something else with it, like Bitcoin or gold, whatever you want to purchase. And then I keep the holding there. So if it goes up again, then I'll pull that off, and then I'll double down when I think that things look like that they're going to be more volatile moving forward. And the big play to make with the VIX is understanding there's almost $7 trillion in cash sitting on the sideline. There's actually $91.4 trillion in global liquidity right now. So I keep hearing all the time on the internet that we're going through a liquidity crisis globally. That's just simply not true. There's $94 trillion in global liquidity that's not in the markets and volatile investments. So what will happen moving forward is that the market will tank down. That liquidity will be used to buy discounts. It'll push the market back up. And every time that happens, you're going to look at the VIX presenting a new opportunity, either to be long, to buy it, hold it, and sell it, or to go short, borrow it, sell it, and pay it back. Those are the 2 good strategies to use, but you certainly need to keep your eye on it. Good trading opportunity, not financial advice. I'm just telling you what I do. I'm going to make that very clear on camera. Now, going into the financial sector, looking at CNBC. CNBC is mainstream media. Most of the time it's garbage, but it is financially based. So they will bring, you can count the amount of scammers they've brought on there over the years. It's not really their job to vet them. They're just here to create content. But CNBC sometimes intertwines and mixes itself together with what's happening in society. And CNBC had a bunch of people on doing a roundtable talking about the new movie City of Dreams, which I hope to see this weekend. Now, City of Dreams, I went online to look at it, and friends of mine went, and I still remember going to see The Sound of Freedom. Don't care what you think about the filmmaker or what have you. What it's doing is raising awareness for the largest problem in this country from a societal standpoint, which is child sex trafficking. And The City of Dreams is a movie that's going through the same type of propaganda that Sound of Freedom went through. I need to make this point because it's very important that the powers that be do not want people to go watch a movie that exposes the child sex trafficking problem in this nation. If we don't address a problem, we'll never have a solution, period. Now, CNBC did a good job. Before I go into that, here's what happens. Sound of Freedom and City of Dreams are going through the same problem. You can go online, you can try to buy tickets for an upcoming show, and when you go, it's going to say sold out. Or there's going to say there's just 2 seats left. When I went and saw The Sound of Freedom, I logged in. I went to go buy tickets for my wife and I. As soon as I looked, there were 4 seats available. I was like, wow, this movie is sold out. This is incredible. I got to the movie theater. It was about 150 degrees in there. They pretty much turned off the air conditioning, and we were one of 6 people in the movie theater. So while the actual theater will tell you that a show is sold out, there are actually almost no people in the theater right now. This is a dirty trick to keep people away. You know, the filmmakers are being robbed. I think that's one thing to look at. But this is robbing people of exposure to the largest problem in the United States and all around the world. If we can't protect our children, we are violating every rule of the Bible. If we can't protect the little ones in this world and we can't keep them safe, we are not doing our job. And the powers that be are not even allowing adults to be educated on this massive problem that if we all knew about, we could probably stop. So really think about that. CNBC, I want to tip my cap to you for actually talking about this on air, exposing the fact that it's one of the largest businesses in the world. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, is kidnapping children and selling them to perverts for sexual desires. Really think about that. Huge problem. We don't talk about it enough in this country, and it's an uncomfortable time. I'm not comfortable talking to you about this, but we have to do it. If we don't exude courage, we'll never have change in this nation. That is a verifiable fact. So talk about this with people. It's a huge problem, maybe the biggest problem that we have seen ever in human history. Now, we have big problems around the country as well. Colorado, more videos are coming out, more 911 calls are coming out, more interviews are coming out. Everyone, including Donald Trump, who went on stage today and talked about the 2 apartment complexes, possibly 3 in Colorado, that are being overrun by Venezuelan gangs. There are now reports and recorded phone calls to 911 of people who live in this building, basically stating that the Venezuelan gangs are going in, they're kicking out who lives in there now, they're replacing them with a Venezuelan, and then they're charging the Venezuelan rent. So let me get the story absolutely correct. This is not them shaking down an apartment complex. They are removing the tenant, putting an illegal in there, and then charging the illegal and not paying the landlord. So that's the real story of what's happening in Colorado. Thankfully, there's a handful of investigative journalists that are out there who probably don't make a whole lot of money, but they're producing really good content and exposing what's happening up there. And this comes hand in hand with the fact that everyone in the state of Colorado is admitting to this, except for the mayor and the governor, which tells you that they're in the pocket of communists who absolutely desire chaos to be on the streets. There's nothing that would serve their purpose more than for Americans to go to war with illegals and call us a bunch of racists for not wanting people in this country. Stay away from the topic. Stay away from the apartment complex. We need to put pressure upon the government itself to be able to use police forces, SWAT teams, or National Guard to get these people the heck out of our states, cities, apartment buildings, and country, period. So that is happening also in Dallas. I live in Dallas, so I called a bunch of people. I said, is this BS? I said, no, there's a lot of Venezuelan gang activity, shootings, things like that. In Chicago, on the O Block, which is a very notorious block for murders, there are Venezuelans that are actually making selfie videos right now with gunfire in the background, taunting gangbangers in Chicago. I promise you, I'm from Chicago. I've been to O Block. I know where that's at. The Venezuelans better be ready for whatever comes their way, because that area of town does not play and does not take kindly to people coming on their turf. So this is all intended to create violence and dissension among the American people to be able to steal more of our freedoms, period. End of story, point blank. So Dallas, Chicago, I heard a rumor. I'll make this very clear, a rumor of the same thing happening in Memphis. I would assume by next week I will hear more rumors until they're confirmed to be fact. I will call them rumors. I think the big problem we have right now is everyone assuming what they hear is gospel, or assuming the gospel they read is gospel. But we are really in a position right now that this country is being pushed to the brink of many things, the brink of bankruptcy, the brink of failure, the brink of civil unrest, the brink of civil war, the brink of international war, the brink of nuclear war. We are at the brink. This is also known as the precipice, but it's going to get worse. We're not fully there yet. That will happen, I believe, in the next 2 to 3 months. I actually think it's going to happen after the election. I think we'll see it get even more chaotic. But we are seeing some shining lights in here. Like him or not, James O'Keefe, I think, has always done a really good job at this undercover, hidden camera, investigative journalism. Whether it's set up or not is people will say, oh, it's a setup. Well, people are starting to get fired from it, so I assume that it's real. And that's all I can do is assume. He recently had someone go on a fake date with a head of, I believe, the Washington Redskins. I'll never call them commanders of the Washington Redskins. They went on a date with one of the officials there who basically called NFL fans, alcoholic middle schoolers, and made a lot of derogatory comments about the hand that feeds him. And he was recently terminated. So now they're going after James O'Keefe because he exposed someone and used their own words against them. This is no different than Bolshevik Russia. There's absolutely no difference between our government when it comes to privacy and censorship, as evidence here, because our last live chat that we did, my video cut out on YouTube, but it did not cut out on Rumble. So it certainly wasn't a problem from my software. It was something that was coming from this very platform that we're on right now, which if you're listening, I hope you are. You are the biggest part of the problem in sharing information in a free nation. And kicking us off is not going to stop us. We're going to continue to talk somewhere else. So James O'Keefe, I think, is doing a good job in that area. School shootings are back on the rise. It's back to school shooting season. This is an area that is just ridiculously sad to even talk about. Right now, we had a shooting in Georgia. 4 people were killed. I think 8 or 9 were injured, including special needs students. The shooter was once again a loner who was getting psychiatric treatment, taking medication, considering a transgender transition. When does this end? When do we start to... The problem is not the guns. Now, they arrested the father because he bought the gun for his kid. If you train your children to be responsible and you train them to use firearms and you train them to live a very good life, they should own a gun. People have owned weapons at an early age in this nation for as long as this nation's been around. But the problem we have right now is the mere fact that the system itself is never questioned. Nothing is ever questioned, right? Like whatever Israel does, just unquestionably follow it. Whatever Ukraine does, unquestionably follow it. Whatever the government says about an act of violence, just unquestionably follow it. This is going to lead us to our own doom in multiple ways. And the school shootings, I'm no data scientist or an expert in school shootings. I'm just a normal guy trying to help the world. But I'm also not a dummy. And I have noticed with my own 2 eyes and my own ears that in at least the last 2 years, there have been at least 18 to 20 public shootings, and 95% of the shooters are transgender or considering transgender treatment or follow left-wing policies. That's a commonality. The other commonality is the fact that all of them are in therapy, all of them are taking drugs, and no one questions the drugs or no one questions the therapist. No one questions the parents. They arrest the parents now, which probably I'll stay out of that because I don't know enough. But the one thing we're not doing is we're not questioning the therapist. What have you been therapying to this child? Or the medications, the SSRs, whatever pills they're taking, these hormone drugs that they give to people. I mean, I am old enough to remember my mother, the year and a half after having a hysterectomy, and her hormones were all over the place, as was her way of thinking, as was her behavior. Now, ultimately, over the years, she was an angel on earth. So I'm going to say that. I love you, Mom. You're not here anymore. God bless you. I miss you every day. But I do remember her going through that from a hysterectomy by seeing the hormone imbalances create behavioral change. That was involuntary. She did that so she could live. She had to do that. These are people who are volunteering and using chemical substances to modify their hormone balance to change their sex. This is an absolute, first of all, it's an abomination of God's creation. And I don't care who hears that. It's true. On the other hand, this is probably the most dangerous powder keg you can give an already unstable person. So if you're considering gender change surgery, you're already mentally unfit. It's a fact. I don't believe in mental illness. I think that's another creation by Big Pharma to sell pills. I believe in demonic possession and lost souls. I think that's there. So you have a lost soul or a mentally ill person that now wants to take drugs that'll alter their hormone balances and ultimately alter their brain function in order to change their sex. They all seek therapists. They all have therapists. All of them are on FBI watch lists. Like, let's not avoid the FBI topic. All of these people are known about years in advance that they are potential dangers to children, yet nothing happens while they continue to feed them drugs and give them therapy. I can't confirm this because I wasn't there, but I've read I read all the time, About half of it is books, old books. The other half is the internet. Big difference between the two. But on the internet, when the Nashville shooter came out, actually the Buffalo shooter, the gentleman who just randomly decided out of nowhere he would drive 60 miles to a shopping center and open fire on anyone he saw because that's totally unplanned. I remember hearing that he shared a therapist with other shooters, that they were doing Zoom therapy. So now you have confidential conversations happening over the internet, which are not confidential at all, as evidenced by the new DARPA program they're working with, and companies that listen in and know exactly they know exactly what we're talking about right now before it actually hits the internet. Matter of fact, the censorship is so strong. Last year, a law was passed that Apple now has free, if the powers that be want to get access to your photos, email, or internet through your phone, they have full carte blanche to do it. So we have FedNow, where intel agencies can randomly search your financial activity, check your balances, see what you buy. And they can also, if you happen to be a domestic terrorist because you don't believe that Harris should be president, then they have access to your phone. So if they can do that with our phone and take our pictures from our phone, and by the way, I've had multiple pictures on my phone that are they just disappear. And if that can happen, then why are we putting one-on-one therapy conversations on the internet? Someone has access to them. The FBI knows about these people. And yet somehow after years of therapy and FBI intervention in their life, they end up killing multiple innocent children around this nation. This is not a school shooter problem. This is a system problem, a systematic flaw, and a big flaw with drugs and probably interference. Through a lot of people have, most of you watching my show know this stuff, but a lot of new people to this have asked, well, what is MK Ultra? What does that mean? What is mind control programming? I will do an episode on that. I'll actually make a stale video, not a live, to do that. I'll do a 5 to 10 minute basic explanation of MK Ultra, but it's basically trauma-based mind control. And we go through it every day, right? 9/11 was MK Ultra. As soon as that happened, everyone lived in fear. Then they passed the Patriot Act and everything was fine because now you don't have any rights, but you're safe because Big Daddy government's taking care of you. This happens in microcosms in all types of areas that are not places you want to be. And one of them is in therapy for transgender surgery while you're an accused school shooter. I have no evidence of what I'm going to say, but I think that there is absolute involvement between the intelligence agencies who want to weaponize human beings through mind control that activate these ill and mentally unstable people to commit heinous acts so that all of society gets so terrified of guns, which ultimately will protect you from any tyrant in the world, that they give up their guns so now they have full control. Watch what happens. They're not lying. If you eliminated guns, there'd be no shooting. The way that they're going to get your guns is going to come through trauma-based, fear-based mind control programming. And school shooters are the greatest way to do it for them because you get to traumatize little children and breed a whole new generation of people who will always look the other way whenever anything happens. It is very much time in this country that we start drilling down on therapists, drug companies, and intelligence that is not being acted upon by powers that be like the CIA and the FBI. They know about these people years in advance. Why don't they do anything? All they do actually is give them more drugs and more therapy. I'd like to know what happens in those therapy sessions to figure out exactly how these people are weaponized, just from my own personal perspective. There was another school shooting here today. I can't remember what state. I think it was in Virginia. Didn't get much coverage. Probably not enough people died, or the wrong people died, or the wrong color of the shooter or religious background. But another one happened today. Let's get into politics. A little more cheery. Let's get into the absolute lunacy that's happening in the political front, which again, I believe is all kabuki theater. It's exceptionally interesting to watch. I don't get wrapped up in it anymore. I used to really follow this stuff. Really right now where I'm focused is I'm trying to piece together a chronological story of how America got here. I've been working on this for about a year. I'm really kind of finalizing this, and it's detailed. It goes into everything from political changes to foreign countries to religion, how it's been modified to get us here. Basically, this whole program started in 1871, which might have been the most important year in all of human history, all of known human history. I'll do that. So I'm not really focused in on the day-to-day politics, but I do find it interesting that Hunter Biden finally pled guilty. 17 years he's facing, interesting number there. for tax evasion. That's a hefty sentence for tax evasion, by the way. And they're going to dangle that carrot in front of the general public to say, oh, look, we're holding him to the fire, 17 years. He's not going to get any time in prison. That's not going to happen. He's probably going to get pardoned before Biden leaves office, whoever that guy is, before he leaves office. And more importantly, this is a ploy for the American public during an election season so the Democrats can say, well, see, we prosecuted one of our own. Well, you actually didn't prosecute him. You allowed him to plead guilty before any evidence was released in the court system. He had to plead guilty so they wouldn't go through discovery, because discovery in that environment would be leaked to the press and more information would come out. Tax evasion and gun ownership, or lying on a gun registration form, these are literally the two most minor crimes that this man committed. His laptop and guys like Garrett Ziegler, who've done a great job putting together the Marco Polo book. Haven't ordered it, but I've seen it. I should order it. I feel bad about that. They have documented, and don't quote me on this because I don't remember, but I think they documented something like 500 to 600 crimes that were found on his laptop, well beyond, anything having to do with tax evasion or owning a gun when you're a drug addict. Those are literally bottom of the barrel, lowest on the totem pole. And the real crimes that are facing are, why are there so many images of Hunter Biden naked with children, with little girls? Kind of goes back to the city of dreams. The bigger problems in this country are bigger problems than most of us want to deal with and handle. And this is another way that they create these ploys to make you think they're doing the right thing. That crime that he committed of tax evasion, first of all, income tax should be illegal in this country. The only thing I actually like about Hunter Biden is that he didn't pay taxes. That's the only thing I like about the guy. But now he's facing 17 years. And to be honest with you, this is the biggest softball, easiest handed thing that's ever been put in front of his easy softball life. And he will probably never face charges for other crimes that he's committed, including selling out American information for tax dollars overseas, collusion with foreign nations, bribery, payoffs. The list really goes on, and it's extensive list that no one seems to want to talk about because now, oh, well, he's guilty, he's going to jail, everything's fine, Hunter Biden's good. Just nuts. We live in just a crazy upside down world. To make it more upside down, we are now hearing that Kamala Harris has raised $361 million since announcing her presidential run. I don't buy that for a single second. They said that there are 3 million small donors. You can thank ActBlue for that extortion. You can really thank them. Tim Walz, they've come out and actually proven his ties to the Wuhan laboratory. Tim Walz, who's was a football coach or whatever stupid background they tell us about this guy. There's a video going around that may or may not be him dancing in chaps and his belly hanging out. It's really funny, but I can't verify that's him, but I did laugh. This guy is an absolute communist clown whose entire family just endorsed Trump. Funny memes come out these days where, next is his dog. His dog's going to endorse Trump. When your own family is turning on you, you are a real piece of work. And this man now is being proven to have ties to the Wuhan lab. Why would a governor of Minnesota, who before that I think he was a senator before that, why would he have taken 64 trips to China if he wasn't communist, right? Like I'm a businessman. If he made products, if he needed something manufactured there, these visits would be warranted. But a politician going to China that many times, it just reeks to high heaven. And by the way, this guy has provided more meme warfare than any Democrat in the history of Democrats. So thank you, Tim Walz, for being an absolute clown show, because you've provided tons of information for real Americans who like to laugh in the midst of chaos. So thank you, Tim Walz. You have my vote for best meme maker of the year. Now, RFK, a whole different story here. RFK, we talked about this a couple episodes ago. Many states like Wisconsin and Michigan where they were trying to keep him on the ballot. And even some of them have written in, Michigan says it's state law after a certain point, you have to be held on the ballot. Well, Michigan doesn't have any problems changing state laws for any other area except for elections. They have no problem bringing in Chinese manufacturing and automakers in Michigan and providing exclusive contracts through Governor Megan Whitmer that really are abhorrent to American society. I don't know if you've heard of this. There's an auto plant that they're building just north of Detroit. This is about a $2 billion project. And part of the contract for the state of Michigan getting this Chinese operation is that they must hire Chinese employees. which means that they're going to bring over another 100 or 200,000 people to work at this facility with full green cards and the blessing of the governor of Michigan. Now, she's trying not to bless RFK removing himself from Michigan, which is an important state in this election. But there are now lawsuits being filed in Wisconsin and Michigan to remove RFK by RFK with RFK's money, by the way. He is paying to remove himself from these states so that Trump can win these states without him taking a single Trump vote. Now, he just was won in North Carolina. So North Carolina, he had to appeal. Appealing anything at the state or federal level from a legal perspective. A lot of friends, rephrase that. I know a lot of lawyers. I won't say a lot of I'm not friends with a lot of lawyers. I know a lot of lawyers. And the one thing that is for certain, when you get to the state level, things get more expensive. When you get to the federal level, you're talking about $250,000 instant retainer for them to even start looking at your case. So RFK has to be putting up significant amount of money to remove himself from the election ballots for the 2024 election. And he did finally actually win in North Carolina. I anticipate that, again, we're going to go through this process. We all have a job to do. This is a country. We are part of one family. We all have a job to do. And if we're not doing that job, whatever that job may be, then the entire thing fails. And right now, part of our job is to make a lot of noise for things like this, to get politicians who need our vote to get into the next seat, to make changes. So the people in Michigan, the patriots in Michigan, are making a big splash right now to get him removed. So hopefully that lawsuit will take place and actually get him off the ballot and free up, a Trump-Harris head-to-head matchup. By the way, this is a good place to put this in here. George Washington told us when America was formed that any nation that lives in a two-party system will ultimately fail. That is proving to be true as we speak. So while I'm applauding RFK for removing himself from the ballot, a third-party independent, I actually don't believe that is the right thing long-term. For this election, it's absolutely the right thing to do. I believe this country needs multiple political parties, and that those political parties need to have candidates that get a specific budget from the government for their campaign, and that's it. I am so tired of being hit up by the Trump campaign for $10, $5, $7, $15. It's every day, nonstop. These are people who are going to be running our government eventually. Why are we financing their ability to get into that seat? This is a major part of the election process that very few people talk about. People talk about dark money. Big problem, needs to go. Absolutely need to get rid of corporate financing in political elections. I'm a businessman, and if I actually ran a business that had $100 million I could put into someone's campaign, I will guarantee you as a businessman, because my only obligation as a CEO of a company is to provide shareholder value. That's it. If I'm going to use company money to promote a political party or a political campaign, I certainly need to. This is just law. This is just math. If my only job as a CEO of a corporation, with every penny I spend in a corporation, the only legal objective or legal liability or anywhere they can hold me to the fire is to provide shareholder value, that's it. They have changed those laws over the past 3 decades to make it as such, where the CEO and the board of directors of a company, the only obligation they have is shareholder value. So if I am a CEO and I'm going to use company funds for a political campaign, it better, by law, produce shareholder value, which means that all the corporation money going into these political campaigns, 100% of the time, is coming with a kickback. I'll finance your campaign, but I want regulations reduced here, or I want this license over here, or I want the approval for this new project over here, or I need a rate cut in my borrowing from the state or from the federal government. This is how the world really works, and we need to get rid of that. Dark money needs to go, corporate money needs to go, and I think that even the small donations from normal people needs to go. If our government can pull money to give away to Ukraine and some of these other places, why can't we pull $100 million per candidate so that they have enough money to run political ads? I'm tired of seeing political ads. I've been watching them my entire life. Our political season never ends, so campaign fundraising never ends. And all that does is create a higher price for those media slots through Big Pharma's domination of our TV networks. So think of Big Pharma, where they fit into this. They pay a lot of money for those ads they run in between commercials. And in the middle of all those ads, now you have political ads that come in and create more demand for less supply. So the price goes up. Big Pharma saves money. The campaigns pay the highest possible price. And as soon as the campaign season's over, Big Pharma slides back in there and takes over. All contributions from people. We need to support candidates with yard signs, with our voice, with our social media, with our videos. We produce more content for political campaigns ourselves that we actually pay for. This is a backwards system, folks. This is not how it's supposed to work. Even the small grassroots campaigns are not a big deal. I don't care that the Trump campaign's asking me for $15 every 15 minutes. It doesn't really matter to me. It just consistently brings up in my mind how flawed this system is. When you raise that type of money, you go out and buy votes. There's no possible way. I think last 2020, the two candidates had like $1.6 billion between them, raised between them. You can't spend $1.6 billion in TV ads, yard signs, campaign hats, t-shirts. They sell those. They make a profit on those. They make more money with that. We need to have, if the government's going to be involved in elections, which they should be because it's for a government position, I believe that governments should set aside a budget to give to campaigns and create a fair battlefield, an area where both opponents have equal playing access and access to voters, and then actually what they say, their new legislation they propose, their plans, their visions for the country, those become the main things, not who they can pay off. I mean, unions have been getting paid off for votes since the mob ran the country, which they still do. But unions, that's how it works. You come in, you raise money, you pay a union head $1 million. He, gives away $500,000 to his buddies. They strong arm their friends, and then you got all their votes. This has been happening since way before Prohibition started, and it's been documented throughout American history thousands and thousands of times. Get money out of elections, get voting, online voting, electronic voting, get it out of their system. Actually, in Arkansas today, I think it was today. It wasn't today, it was yesterday. I saw the video today. They had a town hall meeting about whether or not they should use paper ballots for a small area in Arkansas. It got so heated, one guy knocked another guy out. Paper ballots, pretty simple stuff. No voting machines, no connection to the internet. Make voting day a national holiday. Give everyone the day off. Let them go vote in person, show their ID, fill it out on paper. And like they did in Greece, you have a black stone and a white stone. You throw it in a bucket, you count how many stones are there, and that's who won, all done in the same day. Can't have money involved because all they do is buy votes. People, when the economy tanks like it's tanking right now and how it's about to tank, people will take money for anything. There's multiple videos from 2020 of people taking $100, $50 for their vote. That's literally the only power you have with the federal government is your vote. That's it. Other than that, we're in a slave system, a tax farm. So I think we need to do that and focus on those areas. Now, Trump has had some really big wins coming up. And they might, let me rephrase that. These aren't wins. These are attrition. So Trump just got his sentencing moved by Judge Merchan, who is a real piece of work. He's also now being sued by Stefanik, or being investigated by Stefanik for his sister's or his daughter's involvement in the Biden-Harris campaign. But Trump's sentencing was just moved to November 26th, and we're supposed to consider this a win. This is a hush money trial. This is a private transaction, theoretically, between one person and another for whatever was happened behind closed doors. All I know in that situation is that Stormy Daniels herself has written two official letters with her signature on it saying she never had an affair with Donald Trump. The lawyer Cohen in the middle actually had the affair with her, stole money from Trump and paid her off and blamed it on Trump. That's the case, just to make it simple and concise. So this case should have never existed. He should never be facing any sort of a trial for sentencing. They are literally rumors coming out of Rikers Island. They're creating a spot for him. I actually expect him to try to put him in jail. I don't know if that'll happen or not. I don't get into the prediction game. But I can tell you that is happening. And now he'll be sentenced on November 26th after the election, which is, I guess, fair. But at the same time, there should never have been a sentencing for him at all. He was also backed by the National Fraternal Order of Police. So Back the Blue is now backing the red. And this is a big thing. That is a very powerful union in this country, and they are now fully behind Trump. It doesn't mean, all these things mean, especially for union endorsements, like he has the head of the auto workers union endorses Trump. It doesn't mean that every person in the union does that. That's what they need the money from campaigns to pay these people off. Most people who work these types of jobs don't have, 15 hours a day to research politics. If their dad voted Democrat, they vote Democrat. If the union tells them to vote Democrat, they vote Democrat. And since almost all unions are led by Democrats, that's what's happened. But we're watching this turnaround of unions that are going from Democrat vote only into exploring a Republican. And that's a good thing, but I'll state over and over again, we need more or no political parties. Political parties just create more division all the time. Everywhere we look, America lives in a gang mentality where we have to be pro or anti something. We can't just exist and not care about it. And the political parties are a big problem. Arizona is now facing a lawsuit, and this is just fascinating that this is even a real thing. Arizona is facing a lawsuit for not removing illegal aliens from their voter roll. This is almost as fascinating as California passing legislation banning the use of IDs in their voting. So not just saying you need an ID or can't, they're now saying in California, you can't even use your voter ID. You can't even use your license to be able to vote. In Arizona, they are fighting the state of Arizona. Let's rephrase the way that things are said. They are being sued for not removing illegal aliens from their voter roll. What's really happening is they're getting sued because they want to keep illegal aliens on their voter roll. These are all indications, if not evidence, of treason. This is election interference and is interfering with the entire nation. Now, one thing Trump did today that was really good is he actually said that he is going to have Ben Carson become the National Faith Chairman. Now, Ben Carson is awesome. I love Ben Carson. People talked about him running for president, not a good fit. He ran HUD, he was a brain surgeon, he's done a lot of things in his life, and I have multiple friends who've met him in person who say this is the nicest guy I've ever met. And Ben Carson being the National Faith Chairman, I think is huge. I didn't even know until today that was even a position in this country. That's how demoralized America has become, is that faith is now a hidden secret. Now, secret societies run the country, but open religion has become the secret society. It's time for Americans to start speaking boldly about their faith and honestly about their faith. There is a big, big problem in the understanding of what faith is and what written words are and what they mean. This is a really big problem that we're going to go through in the next couple of weeks. But Ben Carson is now the National Faith Chairman. Awesome. Love to hear that. Now, one of the other things that's confusing that's going to cause bigger problems out here is Netanyahu was just on, I think he was on Fox or MSNBC doing an interview. And the person who was interviewing said basically, Mr. Netanyahu, we keep hearing from Harris and Biden that they are almost at the point of negotiating a ceasefire between you and the Palestinians. Netanyahu smiled, didn't say a word. And when the guy finally stopped talking, he said, yeah, couldn't be farther from the truth. We're nowhere near a ceasefire. Now, this is a big problem, especially for evangelical Christians. Let's remove all emotion from this equation. The Israelis have dropped more bombs on Gaza than were dropped in World War II. It's one of the smallest pieces of land, it's not even really a nation, but it's one of the smallest nations in the world. Innocent children and innocent people are being killed. Yes, October 7th was a tragedy. Should never happen. I'm not saying that, but this is also one of those areas. I just had this conversation in my chat. Because I'm saying something against Israel, then I must be for Hamas. I'm not for either one of them. I don't care what happens to either one of those two places. I care about my own backyard and I care about my children. That's what I care about. I care about this nation being stabilized, not the stabilization of another country. It doesn't matter to me at all. And what I do try to look at things from biblically is looking at things that are fair versus things that are not. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that Israel has the ability to go out and destroy every other person who's not Israeli in the world, period. Israel has no right to exude this much force upon people who don't even have a military. Palestine is, for all intents and purposes, an open-air prison. Israel controls the water and food supply that goes through there. They have wanted that land for all of eternity. And I'm going to get into Israel eventually, and I'm sure I'm going to lose some of you as followers, but I'm not here to have followers. I'm here to tell the truth. And the truth is that right now, America is supporting a massacre. Hamas is not Palestine, regardless of how many propaganda videos you've seen. There are tons of Christians in Palestine. Those Christians are being bombed into an oblivion. Last century, 140 million Christians were killed. I'm really sad that other nationalities and other religions have lost life. No one lost more life the last century than Christians, specifically white Christians. Those are just immutable facts. They cannot be disputed. And the more that we concern ourselves with protecting a nation who is willfully slaughtering and imprisoning people because they're our best ally, I would like anyone in the chat or anyone on any of my social media channels to tell me exactly one time where Israel helped America. Let's remove the biblical prophecy, which is confused by the Schofield Bible. That's a fact of nature. But let's remove that and let's just get into the main topic. When was the last time Israel did anything for America? I'll be waiting, probably until the year 2030. So, we need to look at this from a perspective of a nationalist point of view. It is okay to be a nationalist, to care about your own nation above others. Because I live here. My children live here. We're not going anywhere. Whatever's happening over there, that's their problem. The last thing we need to be doing is giving the country who has one of the strongest militaries in the world, along with most of the technology used for military surveillance and protection, the last thing we need to be doing is giving them money and munitions to destroy a nation next to them who doesn't even have a Navy, Army, Marines, or any military forces at all. All they have is a bunch of Hamas terrorists who they funded. That is an immutable fact. Israel has sent $1.3 billion to Hamas last year. So we are literally funding nonsense, things that should never exist. We are funding the demise of humanity in all cases. And again, I do not support Hamas. I also do not support Israel because Israel of today is not Israel of the Bible. Israel of the Bible are the descendants of Abraham, period. And if we continue to go down this road, we are going to let Israel run shop through the Middle East. Because if they'll destroy and kill every person in Palestine, there's nothing that'll stop them from doing it in Egypt, who hates them too. There's nothing that's going to stop them from doing it to Iran. The story of Iran is fascinating because we have been funding Iran and funding Israel, making us no better than anybody else in the world. Until we start focusing on our own backyard, we really have no moral high ground to even talk to each other. Hearing Americans talk to me, why don't you support Israel? Because I support America. I mean, what's wrong with supporting America? What's wrong with supporting the state of Texas, the town that I live in, my own family, things that are actually important to me? I feel horrible for the atrocities overseas. I really do. But the more we finance them, the more enemies we make. And we're letting these enemies in through our northern and southern borders. Does no one else see the lunacy that occurs? If we allow Israel to destroy Gaza, we are going to enrage the entire Muslim nation. And by the way, a lot of Christians in Palestine, a lot of Christians throughout the Middle East that are moving. Christians are actually being slaughtered in Pakistan. So if we continue to bomb the living hell out of Palestine and support Israel in doing so, those bombings are going to affect families. This has already happened. Obama dropped a bomb, aptly named Obama, dropped a bomb every 20 minutes during his reign of terror as American president. And now there are generational hatreds for America, and those people are coming in through the southern border. All that's happening over there by us financing these wars is we are creating future enemies that'll be in our backyard. It doesn't get more simple than that. The world needs peace. Peace. That thing God talks about, peace on earth? That's the thing that this nation needs, not another warmongering politician stealing our money to kill innocent people around the world. That's the sad fact of warfare, especially warfare we can't see. There are way more innocent people that die in war than there are military soldiers. So until we focus in on peace, which our government told us they were doing, and now Netanyahu is saying, nope, we're not even close to a ceasefire. If you're not noticing this intent to destroy and level every person, guilty and innocent, in Gaza, you are blindfolded by propaganda, period. We need peace in this world. And ironically, to wrap this up, the biggest warmonger we've ever seen in office, Dick Cheney, endorse Kamala Harris today. The endorsement, watch who endorses Harris and run for the hills. Anyone who's publicly endorsing Kamala Harris is certainly and openly does not care about America at all. So with that said, normally I got to get this fixed. I can't see the chat. Let me see if I can see it on my device here. I still don't know how. I don't think it works on mobile. I probably need to use my actual computer for this. But that's what I've got for you here this evening. Thank you so much for being here. I think having Ben Carson and all that stuff happen, that's what I'm focusing on today myself. There's a lot of things to get angry about in the world, but there's always one thing that brings you peace, and that's your relationship with God, period. You know, the Bible's a book, the church is a building. Life is about your personal relationship with God. I don't care who you are or what you believe. If things are bad in your life or things are good in your life, just take a time out and speak to your Creator, because you certainly have one. And that Creator is dying to hear from you. So hopefully this weekend is really good for all of you. You get to spend a lot of time with your family, with friends. I pray that each and every one of you has an incredible time this weekend, that you're building new relationships, building your old relationships, and leading your family into a brighter future in the midst of all this chaos. So until next time, I am Eric Rice. This is the Rice Report. God bless you, and God bless this country. We'll see you next time, everyone.